Hey, Myrna.
Hi. Well, I guess it's my turn to lead, and we're doing a life design beyond limits. So this is where we kind of let loose and go spiritual if we want to, and we don't hold back.
Yeah, welcome Ascension. Let's do it. Let's bring in the
Yeah,
new era.
let's go, let's go. So it's interesting when we propose the idea, you propose the idea that we kind of have this sort of behind the scenes chat about our individual ascension journeys and what we're kind of seeing out in the world. I didn't know if we'd have enough to talk about. That was silly. There's so much going on. We seem to have plenty to talk about.
We're evolving every week. We're evolving.
We're evolving in the world around us, moving pretty fast. So, well, I wanted to share something that happened to me in my experience. And I guess my goal is that people comment below and think about joining our Patreon. The link will be in the description. So you can participate in these conversations as we have them. About what's happening for you as the world seems to be ascending. Um, so I had a morning in the past week where I woke up and had this overwhelming feeling of contentment, which is not normally how I wake up. Sometimes I wake up glad. Excuse me. Sometimes I just wake up rested. And there are a couple of mornings I woke up not feeling well, so it's kind of up and down, but this overwhelming feeling of contentment was different. And as I just kind of settled into it to check in with, like, what is this? I had this image flash up in my mind that I told you about, of like a little fairy sleeping in the leaf of a cabbage, like in a garden, a vegetable garden. And the feeling was not just contentment, but also one with the world, kind of being one with creation, everything operating as it should. And in that operation, it yields contentment and delight and care.
Yeah.
And I just felt different than I normally do. It was a wonderful feeling, and I just was thankful. Wow, thanks for that. I know I can't turn into a fairy in a cabbage leaf, but I'm enjoying this moment of contentment. And if I've had it once, I could have it again. Like this contentment might be available to me. So, and then I like settled back into like 10 minutes more of sleep before my alarm was going to go off. So, I feel like there's strife in the world and struggle and difficulty and lots of unknowns. And you and I, as entrepreneurs, we eat problems for breakfast. We're familiar with the unknown. We navigate it all. But lots of people are not entrepreneurs and they don't want their life disrupted. And oh, well, everything's disrupted. Everything's disrupted and it's going to stay that way for some undetermined length of time. So I hope in our work on this channel and in Patreon that we can give people a place to have another perspective. As we share our own experiences, contentment is available. And we're heading into fall season as it happens. There's been a happy squirrel on a nut journey, in the yard. I'm like, there's no walnuts buried in the lawn, honey. I don't know what you're going to find there, but he was busy and probably contentedly so. A bunny rabbit hopping through looking for fresh grass. So a little bird pecking at my window. I guess nature, I think you found this too, can direct us to there is an orderliness to the world, to how creation has been imagined and how we live through it. And while we're on our screens, we get disconnected from that. So I can't recommend sleeping in a cabbage leaf, but maybe understanding that you might have some contentment if you can connect again with maybe the rhythm of nature, the rhythm of the natural world that we are a part of, even though we're filled with, unnatural light and computer screens. So it was delightful and I wanted to share it. And That's my Ascension update for the week.
It's funny when we say the world is ascending, but it doesn't feel like it because of what is being reflected back to us. But I love what you're talking about how if you reconnect to nature, you just start seeing, hey, it just keeps going on and on, no matter what our little small human distractions are,
Mhm.
and how big they may seem to us, right? I had a bit of a, I don't know if you want to call it like a crisis of faith or dark night of the moment, because it wasn't a dark night of the soul. It was just a dark night in the moment. But I'm not an insomniac, but I found myself kind of in the middle of the wee hours last week, awake and like mind's going wild kind of thing, because I'm usually can still it pretty good after lots and lots and many, many years of
Mhm.
effort to get to that point where I can still it. And it was like I was going in this kind of, I don't know, a little bit of a spiral to, I don't have any control. I don't know what's going on. I'm supposed to have faith. I feel like I have faith. I feel like it's good, but yet it's not, there's no visible signs. But, I'm always a girl with a plan, but I don't have a plan. And this is very weird. And I'm in new territory. And so I'm kind of having this little mind meltdown, so to speak. And then, by the end, I got my journal out. I don't usually, I got a notebook out and started journaling. I didn't even use a journal. I just got a spiral notebook and started writing down. And about 5 pages later, front and back, I'm like, all right, mind, you want to have conniptions? Let's give you a voice and you can have your conniptions. And then by the time I got to the end of it, I had this like insight of it's kind of like what would Jesus do? It would be like what would Eckhart Tolle do? If you're Tolle. Eckhart Tolle is the author of The Power of Now, his famous work, and he also wrote The New Earth, which are profound books that talk about the mind and the craziness in the mind and how also the now is the only reality. I mean, it may seem like the future, that's a reality I have to worry about or whatever, but it's not. It hasn't happened yet. And the past is not reality either. It's done. So I'm really just giving a very short synopsis of his great teachings, and I follow his YouTube channel. And I was like, what would if Eckhart Tolle was with me here in the room at, 5 o'clock in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, where I couldn't go to sleep, right? What would he say? He would say, the now is the only moment that matters. And these things that I was, kind of spiraling about were about the future. And the only reality is that I'm right now safe in my house, money in a savings account. I have loved ones. I have my health. In the moment, all is well. Everything's okay. I can't predict what's going to happen the next moment. It might be awesome and glorious, or it might be stressful and unpredictable. But in this moment, which is the only moment I do have any control over as far as my reaction to. So that was kind of I mean, even after all of these many, many years of working relentlessly on, and I mean relentlessly, radical self-honesty, something would pop up, I would address it. I did many, many mornings of journaling until I kept finding that that's what was going on. Then I woke up to what the journaling was doing, which was basically giving my mind a voice and then coming in with this insight to quell it and chill it the heck out. And so that was what happened the other evening, or wee hours of the morning recently. So that's kind of like, I think all of us are disrupted. And it's funny you said something about how we'll have these disruptions and it's ongoing. There'll just be new disruptions and it'll be a different disruption and there'll be another disruption. But the fastest way to waking, well, you can either be stirred awake or you can be shaken awake. And I think we have a choice around that. Do we want to be stirred awake or shaken? And shaken isn't so much fun. I mean, unless you're an adrenaline junkie or something, or you're hooked on stress, you're addicted to stress and drama. I mean, maybe, that would be, preferable to you. But most of us don't feel that way. Most of us don't want that. So, yeah, so we can be stirred awake or shaken awake is how I look at it. And so we can be stirred to ascension or shaken to ascension. Oh, so those are my thoughts because this week has been a little bit of well, this week now I think I'm fine. Last week was a bit of a roller coaster ride after we met last week and talked. That's when all that kicked in, and I was like, I'm all okay. And then, poop. And the disruption was nothing external. The disruption was all in here actually. Yeah. So, and it was of my own worrying that created it, which I find as when it comes down to it, most things are. Even if you are being triggered by someone else's behavior, even if your response to it is triggered by someone else's behavior, or their commentary or whatever it is that they're doing or saying, what's going on is your reaction in here is what's going on. And so that's when you can go plume, or you can have a reaction that is, more stirring versus shaken, right? But I can't point my finger to anyone else and blame anyone else for my little spiraling in the wee hours of the morning. It was totally me. And as again, like as it usually is, but yeah. So that's kind of my insight or update for this week. I guess the insight or the takeaway could be, your mind's going to have its conniptions, but maybe you can stop and notice it and then turn to a teacher if you need to, like an Eckhart Tolle, who reminds us over, I can't believe how many times he has said it over many, many years, like over a couple of decades, right? Be in the now, be in the present moment, be in the now. It's such a beautiful teaching, and it's so helpful to snap you back into the moment. And then you can look out the window and see the hummingbird, or you can look out the window and see the monarch. I just saw the first monarch yesterday. I have these plants in the backyard. They're native to growing out here in the Texas Hill Country where I live, and they're called frost weeds, and they're very tall. They get to be about 4 or 5 feet tall. They're well, maybe not 5 feet tall, probably about 3 or 4 feet tall, and they put out these beautiful cluster of white blooms right in time, just in time for the monarch migration to come through central Texas on their way to Mexico. And I saw the first one yesterday, and those blooms are like they're waiting, come, and the bees have been around it recently. And then I saw the first monarch yesterday. So those little moments where you really can attune to nature and you can be in the moment and appreciate that no matter what craziness is happening
See
or what
that
you
cycle,
anticipate.
the time of the blooming corresponding with the time of the visit of the butterflies that benefit from the blooming.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some comfort in, wow, these cycles, there
Mhm.
might be an engineer involved in how this creation thing works. Well,
Yes.
something comes to mind as you were talking, and I was sick for a couple of days, and I sit here now. I'm about 10 hours behind, and I have to be out of the office all day today. And in the old paradigm, in our 3D world, how I have lived most of my life has been a high value on productivity, a high value on making a list and crossing things off, getting things done. You and I have had this conversation many times that we seem to be headed into a world where that has less and less value.
Mhm.
There's much more value in living in the now. There's less value in the 5-year plan, because what in the world are we going to be looking at in 5 years? We have no clue.
Yeah.
And so how we unlearn how we have operated in the world is disruptive.
Yeah.
And when I hear the little voice in my head, well, couldn't you get these 3 things done in the time you think you could normally only get the 2 things done? Like, how can we cram the third thing in? Because we're in catch-up mode, girl. We got to get caught up. And I am doing some ascension thinking, if you will, to say, I'm going to be in the flow,
Hmm.
and I'm going to do the most important thing first, and then the second most important thing after that, and it's going to work itself out. Like I'm not even going to look at the whole list. What's the number one item? Single focus, number one item. And I'm just having to unlearn the internal pressure and stress of get it all done. This is how I know I'm working effectively. This is how I know I'm good at what I do. And to unlearn that, all that structured programming, I think the hard part of unlearning it is it has served me for decades.
Yeah,
It has served me. This is like I'm undoing part of the internal structure of how I've lived. Like I'm taking down parts that are like holding the weight of the building I occupy. It's like, but how will it keep standing? It's kind of like the I'm undoing some supports about how I operate unconsciously now for so many years
yeah,
of doing it, and then get this conscious reminder when it's disrupted. Like I was out of commission for 2 days, and so now I'm in catch up mode, and I don't have to drive hard and get it all done and feel worried until I cross the last thing off the list. That is an old mode of operating, and we're moving into a new mode. And I think the Eckhart Tolle, point of view is so perfect. What's happening now?
hmm
My dad used to say, let's join the church of what's happening now. What's happening now? So in the now, yeah, that takes the list down to one or two items, first and then second. And then we'll recheck more to do. Yes, first and second,
yeah.
don't give me more than 5 feet of visibility because I don't know what to do with 10 feet and 20 feet. It won't look the same when I get there anyway. So, it's a lot of unlearning as part of the disruption, I think.
Yeah, adaptivity, I think, is our greatest superpower right now, is be
Mhm.
adaptable. So, well, thanks, Myrna. This was some really good insight. I think we take away a lot of the lessons every day that we go through. And I think there's value in stopping and having that examination where you stop and you look at it and you go, oh, wait a minute, what does this mean?
Mhm.
Even as advanced as I am, as much work as I've done on myself, I can
Mhm.
still be hooked by this thing, or whatever it is, this pattern, this drama, this,
Mhm.
this hidden little subconscious thing that's a tenacious tidbit is what I like to call it. It still can hook us and it can still do the thing. So you going to the spiritual practices, taking it to the fire like you do,
Mhm.
remembering the Eckhart Tolle teaching like I was doing. So whatever we need to do to meet, I think, stay in that moment and find our center is what's really important right now.
I love this quote from one of your favorite authors, Richard Bach. Jonathan Livingston Seagull, I think was his first big book. And we can end our session today. We're missing Brian. He's not available today. Um, he said, how do you know when you're done with this life? If you're still breathing, you're not done. So we can trust the engineer in this process. Still breathing? Oh, still work to do. Okay.
True. So
Yeah,
true.
still not done. Well,
Thanks,
this has
Myrna.
been a lovely session. Great to see you. Thanks for joining those who have. Take care.